Are we live? Of course. It's got this weird delay that causes it every time. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our weekly podcast, the Game Audio Hour, where we discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas to the latest techniques, project experiences to audio secrets. Here's where you'll find your in-depth coverage and opinions related to game audio. And this is episode 52. We've done 52 weekly episodes. We call it the end of season 1, guys.
Yeah, I'll drink to that.
I'll drink this PlayStation controller.
Yeah.
What are you drinking?
Me? I'm drinking a PlayStation controller.
No, that's a dedicated game audio man right there. You hollowed it out and you fill it with whiskey. Is that what I'm guessing?
No, I put it up to my ear like this, and I can hear music. See, like this.
Isn't that a cell phone from like 1982?
It's missing the cable. Yeah.
You should attach a giant fake antenna to that and carry it around GDC while you're there.
And just say, hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
hold on.
Kyle?
I'm getting a call from Japan. Hold on.
So how are you, Kyle?
I'm doing well. We always discuss our ailments at the beginning of the show, so why stop now? Just got over strep throat, yay to having an elementary school child. And, I can't say over. I guess I should explain it because my voice is lower than normal and raspy, but my ear's plugged, my throat's finally, it doesn't hurt to swallow. Scotch is the cleanser of all strep throat things, plus some antibiotics. And other than that, though, ironically, it kind of got my energy, but I was really surprised. No headache. I didn't have, like, sniffles or anything. I just kept working. A little slower than normal, but it wasn't bad. How about you? How you doing, Alex?
I'm well. My 8-month-old daughter has a cold. My 5-year-old doesn't have a cold. And on the weekend, we actually went to try some Japanese pottery. There's this cool thing that you can do here that I should have taken Vince when he came, because it's really fun, where you actually go there and they give you a lump of clay and you just make whatever you want, and then they'll fire it for you and then send it to you like a month later.
That's cool.
Up in the middle of
awesome.
up in the middle of the mountains in central Hyogo Prefecture here where I live. It was very, very therapeutic. There is something extremely therapeutic about modeling in clay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that sounds
really cool.
awesome.
How you doing, Vince?
Man, I'm doing great, especially since I'm thinking about my next trip to Japan there. I've definitely got to do that. I could definitely use another vacation, since I'm just in the throes of all these projects, one after the other right now. But otherwise, I'm okay. I'm doing pretty well here.
Well, if it's anything exciting you can tell us about, please do.
Oh, man. Darn it. Yeah, I should say anything. Yeah, eventually. One of these years, I think, okay, I'm going to talk about it this year. I thought that last year. It didn't happen. I'm going to talk about it this year. We'll see. This year is just beginning. So.
Well, there you heard it, folks. Hot off the fire. We will hear about it eventually.
Yes.
It's not on the scale of that game company, but possibly in a few weeks, I might be able to also discuss a little bit about what I've been doing with Vitae in Kyoto, which it's pretty interesting. It's pretty unusual. That's the company that I'm working at on part time. So it's not that game company, but it's still pretty interesting, especially for game audio people. So hopefully,
I'm super
stay tuned.
interested in it.
I can't wait to hear it, man. That's awesome. So we're getting a little bit of a bandwidth issue. I just got to kick us off by saying, so apologize to listeners if you hear us locking out and popping back in. I adjusted my bandwidth down off of HD in case it's me, but it's the Googs, because we're all connected to a Google server, and then he's feeding us. So not really anything we can do about it by changing our bandwidth. But, Alex, you brought up something about pottery that reminded me of something I thought might be really cool to kick off the show. Archaeoacoustics. You guys heard about that?
Archaeoacoustics. So old acoustic stuff. Is that the sound of old things, or the research of old sounds themselves?
It is the use of acoustical study as a methodological approach within archaeology. So you study how things sounded in the old back, in the way days. And the reason it reminded me of it is because I remember reading this article about the sounds around a potter's wheel that were etched into pottery like 5,000 years ago.
Huh.
What?
So,
Say
did you
that
guys ever
again.
read
The
that article?
sounds. Can you say that again? The sounds of a pottery wheel that were etched into a piece of pottery.
Yeah, while somebody 5,000 years ago was making a piece of pottery, the needle that was etching in stuff on the pottery was vibrating with the sounds around that person and etched those sine waves into the grooves of this pottery.
Now that's pretty serious archaeology right there. Like, how would they look at this groove that's going around a pot and think, that groove doesn't seem so linear. Let's like drop in an LP record needle in there and see what we can hear.
Yeah, I'm looking at the link here. I'll put it in the chat room and I'll include it in the show notes. Now, I preface by saying I've never heard of this website. A weird website called O Gizmo, but there it is. And they have a link to something you can hear. So I think it seems plausible, right? What is an etching of a record but a needle that's being vibrated? So if there's a needle etching your pottery, but the sound of the potter's wheel must be so loud that the people around it must have been super loud to be able to kind of influence that needle.
But you would think that the needle would have to actually be fixed to something. Like, you would think that in that time people would have been using their hand to hold the needle as it goes around, right?
Yeah, good point. Maybe I should read more about this article. Well, actually, to tell you the truth, I read this article 2 years ago, and it came out in 2006, so I would have to revisit it. But I only thought about it this last second when you were mentioning pottery. But that would be kind of a cool piece of archaeology to get into, especially a guy like me who wanted to study archaeology. And I actually re-entered school at UCSB to start studying archaeology. My career pulled me back out of it again. I never thought about that. I was in the beginnings of studying nautical archaeology, but this would have been right up my alley had I known about it.
It's really fascinating, like early recording technology. Oh, that's extremely early, of course, but one thing that always impressed me for some reason back when I studied music history ages and ages ago was Bartok would go around to villages and record the sounds of folk songs on his wax cylinder.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And the wax cylinder created by?
It's kind of cool. Now if you want to...
Go ahead, sorry.
Created what? It's kind of interesting. Now if the idea of recording is so easy, it's just in your hand, but actually to kind of wheel out this big chest and open it up, and there's a wax cylinder in there, and it I don't know how wax cylinders work, but that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a museum of wax cylinders at UCSB up the road here. They have a link, and you can listen to all kinds of stuff, like Teddy Roosevelt doing speeches and things.
Mm-hmm.
Wax cylinder. I'm looking it up right now to include in also the chat window as well as the show notes.
So Vince, while we are talking about audio archaeology and ancient audio, let's talk about Roland Sound Canvas.
Yes! I thought you said we couldn't.
Oh. No, Roland.
The Sound Canvas.
Yeah. Wow. Now, I was actually talking with another dude, another local composer here in LA, Jeff Ball, and we were talking about what would be needed if we were making a game that wanted to do not just the feel, but the actual sound of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which was one of those great games of the mid-90s. And so we were talking about the hardware that was out at the time and what the music composers were using. And they were using this Roland gear back in the day. So that would be high-end JV or XV stuff. So the JV 2080 was really big. There was the Roland XV 3080 and 5080 that were also coming out in the mid-90s. But also at that time, it was a very funky time because a lot of the music manufacturers were thinking, hey, what if we pushed our MIDI gear towards the end consumer? So instead of playing a CD or a tape, they would be playing MIDI files. And they thought, well, what if we had these modules like the Sound Canvas? And
Oh, man.
I was just having so much fun thinking about Sound Canvas stuff and trying to find all of old my old soft synths like Virtual Sound Canvas, which was packaged with Cakewalk, I think many years back. Must have been at least a decade back. And I was super excited to see a little bit of news that that Roland is actually putting a virtual version of their Sound Canvas onto iOS.
Yes.
So for $15, your iPad or iPhone can be a MIDI sound module instead
Look,
of
I mean,
selling, buying something on eBay for $100, $200 now. Hey, $15 in an
75.
iPhone.
I just looked it up. $75 seems to be the average price.
$75. Okay.
sorry, I don't mean to like rain on this parade of happiness with the thunderstorm of cynicism, but why would you want Sound Canvas?
So, well, Sound Canvas, yes, basically it is a very cheap Rompler with a very small sound set. It's it's on the order of megabytes. It's not on the order of hundreds of megabytes or gigabytes, and it's not super sophisticated either. But it got me thinking about actually one of the things that I really liked about Roland instrument sets, whether you get a Sound Canvas module or one of their nice modules like the XV5080 or one of their new ones like the Integra, is that they have a really complete sound set, give you hundreds of instruments, and they all sound really good together. They mix really well together. The filters are designed in a really nice way so that things just seem to sit right next to each other in a very appropriate way. It's very easy to mix those songs if you make it with a Roland sound module. So back in the day, I actually not only had a Roland module as my general purpose module, I also had an Emu Proteus. And there were some sounds that I actually liked out of the Emu Proteus better than the Roland. But for some reason, even though the Emu Proteus did similar things to the Roland and gave you hundreds of sounds, they all sounded pretty good, they never sounded quite as good together compared to the Roland stuff. So, maybe it's just, there might be some rose-colored glasses or headphones or whatever creeping into this. But, those old pieces of Roland gear, when they played a song, it sounded tight. It sounded connected to each other. It sounded coherent. And I found it very easy to make music with those pieces, even though, the quality is nowhere near the stuff that we have now with soft synths.
Yeah, I should probably explain. The first ever synthesizer that I had was a Yamaha SY22.
Oh yeah.
Then the second synthesizer that I got was a Roland JV30. So just for those who don't know, the JV30 is basically the Sound Canvas in a keyboard, except with some special key presses, almost like the Konami code. You can actually flick it into MT32 mode. Mm-hmm. And I quickly discovered that Sound Canvas, it was a really awkward time, I think, for electronic music, because around the same time you were starting to get a real voice for techno. There was like, at least in my musical vocabulary at the time, there was 808 State, and there was the Future Sound of London, and the KLF, and the Shaman, and all of these kind of seminal pop techno bands. And that was the sound that I wanted. But then I was stuck with tubas and oboes and and like bad timpani and like ridiculous sounding snare drums. And I think that my only memory of the Sound Canvas is always being frustrated that it was never there. It was like never. It's like almost there, but not quite. And I had to. I have sort of fond memories, I guess, of really abusing the JV30 NRPNs, the Nurpins, the Nurpins is, to try and actually get control over the resonance and the cutoff of the sounds inside the JV30. But pretty much.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, though. With all that gear, there was all this stuff that was dictated by the MIDI 1.0 standard. which we're still using to this day. And then there's all the extra stuff with Nerpins.
Right.
And I'm still using that in order to do stuff with my other instruments. But back in the day, I learned very quickly, or actually, I wish more quickly, but I learned eventually that, having control over that and not just dealing with notes and continuous controller 1 and 11 and 7 and all those things. If you got control of the Nerpins, then you can do really awesome sounding stuff.
Yeah. That was this kind of, it was a good education. It was a good way, to sort of learn on the fly about how MIDI works. Being forced to resort to Nerpins just because the sound canvas sounded so bad. Well, actually, I just always remember flicking it into MT32 mode, and it's like MT32. Now, at least there's a little bit of grit and character there. It's sort of that technologically. There was a great patch on the MT32 called Dr. Solo, which was basically kind of like a sort of a modulated square wave, saw wave kind of thing with some reverb and delay on it, which sounded really good. But the MT32 was sort of technologically not quite able to be there yet, so it was still had some character, like a lot of the old D50 sounds and the DX7 sounds, of course. But come the sound canvas after that, it sort of became the sort of uncomfortable, kind of not very impressive middle ground between almost realistic but not really gritty and analog and sort of artificial, intentionally artificial. Just sort of, we want to make this realistic but we can't. Kind of like Virtua Fighter 1.
Virtua Fighter 1 was really cool back then.
It was really good, of course.
Polygons. Yeah.
Oh,
but that was a weird time. We weren't quite realistic. There wasn't really enough memory to get those really authentic representations of acoustic instruments that obviously they wanted to do because they packed it with woodwinds and strings and brass.
Exactly. And I think when the Roland JV80 came out, that's the first time I started to scratch my think, wow, that actually sounds pretty good. And then, of course, that was followed by the classics like the JV1080. The JV1080 was a real classic.
That's a classic.
I never had one, but the sounds that I heard from that were amazing. Then 2080, and then those expansion packs that they had. You remember also the 2080? You could actually take off the top panel and put in like different chips to expand it.
Dude, I got a JV1080 right here with 4.
You got some expansion boards.
More memory and 2 expansion boards. It'll handle 4. I've got the orchestral expansion because Mike told me to get it, and I got it recently on eBay. And what's the other one? House collection, house music.
Oh yeah.
What do you use it for, Kyle?
I don't, but
you have to use them.
The first I did a play. I wrote music for a play that a friend of mine did, and it was really cool because he had everybody in black and had these giant puppets, and you couldn't see anything on stage. Later on, I saw video of Japanese troops doing that. It was something he was privy to, but I had never seen. So it was the first time I had seen it. It was really inspirational. It's called Halloween's Web. And I wrote all the music for that on my JV1080, and it was all very Russian orchestral music. And I was just using the stuff that was built into the JV1080. And at the time, it was early on. I didn't have a lot of gear. I actually bought the JV1080 because I wanted to run my guitar through a guitar to MIDI converter and be able to do, choirs and all that cool stuff. But before we move on, Sound Canvas SC55. I'm getting in my 2 cents here.
Okay.
I don't know if this is the most influential band over me or not, but the name of the band is the Cocteau Twins. You guys familiar with the Cocteau Twins?
I've heard of them, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that support. So, anyway, I dug those guys for so many years. I still listen to stuff. I just got an LP, actually, of one of their albums because I saw it was available on 180 gram. And so anyway, I went to see them on the Heaven in Las Vegas tour, which is a breakthrough album for them. And I remember the singer, Elizabeth Fraser. You might have heard of her because she's been doing a lot of very famous things. A wonderful singer. She into these pockets, and she pulls out a remote control, and she turns around behind her, and she clicks a button pointing behind her, and all of a sudden these drum loops start playing, and then the band just takes off. And so I didn't know what they had used for many years, and then I was reading articles in like Rolling Stone or something. This was before the internet, where Robin Guthrie, the guitarist, had said that they were using a sound canvas to do all that. They had moved all their drum tracks that used to be all these crazy drum machines into a sound canvas. I thought, I got to get one of those. Never did. Never could afford it. By the time I started paying attention to them, the Pro version came out, and that thing was expensive.
The Pro version was the bad boy version with like the little section on the bottom, wasn't it? I never knew what was different about it. It was
almost looked like a little PC.
Yeah.
And the Pro version is 18-bit rather than 16-bit.
Nice. 18 bits of quality.
Still 32K. 32 parts, though, rather than 16. I mean, it's Cirrus. So there's my sound canvas and why I love it. So forget you, Alex. I like it.
That's right.
I'm gonna stand by the MT32. The MT32. Oh, there it is.
Ooh.
This is different.
Oh my God! You actually have that?
Dude, you have no idea how much music I've written on this thing. It's a Roland PMA5. It was the first synthesizer that was like a Palm Pilot.
I can't believe you actually have that. I don't know anyone that actually worked on that thing. That's so wacky.
Yeah, well, that's how famous I am. You never heard of me, and I'd worked on it. So check this out. This is what gets crazy about this thing. It has this very high-end device right here. Ready? Oh!
It's a stylus.
I've still got the stylus. A lot of people lose them. Like I see them on eBay, and because I often think I'll get another one because one day this will break or I'll lose it. And it comes in a fake leather case. It's very serious. It's very beautiful.
Yeah.
But I occasionally will get on eBay and look for them, and actually there's some out there that have the pin now, but for a while I would just find them without a pin, and I thought, man, this is like a collector's item. I can sell this for $1 million. So you've never used one of these?
There's one that's going, buy it now for $94. I'm thinking about it.
That's too much.
Too much? Oh,
I'm kidding.
I really want one right now.
My first game audio gig was for as an audio guy. Yeah, game audio. Because I had done some game stuff, graphics, and level design. But when I finally got into game audio, who's a regular host on the show, was the guy who gave me that shot. And the first song I sent him, I composed on this thing, the PMA5, because he wanted it for the Sims 2 NDS. And I thought, this thing sounds like that. Why go crazy with sample libraries and stuff? Just do it on a PMA5. Lay in bed. So that's pretty fun. Get yourself a Roland PMA5. $100, huh, on eBay?
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm thinking about this now. I mean, it's, that's not bad for, a MIDI sound source that, happens to have some extra input functionality into it.
It does. It's got MIDI in and through, and it's got computer connections. So there you go. Look at that.
Yeah, Roland is it's an interesting company actually. When you think about the different Japanese. Oh, there we go.
Sorry, keep talking. I'm just trying to get it. It boots up and says, "Hello." It's kind of funny. This is one letter at a time, and then the D goes too far, and it comes back and then sits into the spot like a cute little character. Okay, I'm done.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, there is something funny about the Roland character. You compare Roland to the other Japanese manufacturers that were big in the 90s, like of course Yamaha and Korg, and there's sort of a what is it? Yamaha seemed to be, I don't know, they seemed to sort of everything that was equivalent to Roland's model with Yamaha, at least in my feeling at the time, just seemed to be a little bit better somehow. So I think there was the JV80 compared to the SY85, I think it was the equivalent, and just sort of a little bit better. And then of course the DX7 compared to the D50, and it's sort of but there's something about the Roland stuff that when you really abuse it, you really kind of push it. It tends to sort of give you better results, especially when you're working on a big scale. Like I sort of remember, if you're layering lots of Roland sounds together, it'll be nice. And the one time that my whole opinion of Roland flipped around was when I was in China, was it like 16 or 17 years ago? The one time I've ever done a Techno Performance Live was like 16 or 17 years ago in an underground room in a international students' dormitory in China, and some guy had his Roland MC303, the groove box, the first groove box, and I always thought plug into it, it kind of sounds sort of like that JV30 kind of crappy sound that I'm used to, but then when he actually got it through this big PA, the MC303, like, wow, whoa, this huge sound is like, blow your hair back kind of stuff. And I think that sort of conservative nature of the Roland sound lends itself better to being really abused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, well, this bass machines, absolutely, to this day, people are still looking for Roland sounds.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, I got a book I think I'll share. Moving on.
Okay.
It's called The Complete Guide to Connecting Audio, Video, and MIDI Equipment. I've noticed that a lot of people I talk to don't know how to set up MIDI clock. And, setting up audio routing can be a little bit confusing depending upon how many things you're putting in place. I've noticed a lot of people don't have patch bays to simplify things for themselves, And so I was on Twitter, and I saw Sonic State, my cold is still getting the best of me, talking about this book, and so I ordered it. And two things, Amazon had it delivered through the UPS on Sunday. I kind of felt guilty that stuff is being delivered to me on Sunday, especially by the post office, I used to work at the post office. I never worked on Sunday, but apparently our consumer culture has created a demand where now we have to get mail on Sunday. But the book is pretty cool. There's a couple of things that I wish they were doing. I wrote it as a Pro Tools instructor. But I still am really impressed with the book, mostly because of these kind of graphics that he does. He'll have one page of what the gear looks like you're going to put together, and then the next page is the schematic of how everything comes together, with a legend at the bottom explaining what all the different cables are. And also on the preceding and following pages, he'll have the list of cables you have to buy. So, he'll say, like, you need 10 light pipe cables, and you just know to order 10 light pipe cables. He doesn't include any prices or anything like that because prices fluctuate, and that makes sense. But at the end of the book, he also discusses what the cables are, what they do, what they look like. He also discusses all the links where you can buy the furniture. He always lists as optional, or the audio interfaces that he used throughout the book, which was really interesting. I have to say, it affirmed that my studio is set up correctly. What I wish I could do is that I wish this was online and I could just switch out the audio interface or the desk. But can you imagine how much information he would have to collect to create an online kind of drag and drop interface and then show you the best way to hook all that stuff up? But if you don't know, or you don't feel quite assured that you're doing it right, or if you just want to spend $10, really? No, this was $39.99. I bet you it wasn't that expensive on Amazon. I don't remember. But if you're willing to spend it, here's a book that's got every kind of routing that you're going to want to do. And I do have to say, before I finish, that it isn't all Pro Tools. He's got Focusrite, he's got Motu, but the majority of it is Avid equipment, and I think every single one of them goes to some sort of Pro Tools software situation, because he does list what softwares you're going to need and how to install them too.
So speaking of Pro Tools there, Kyle, I think you mentioned a little earlier that you have a new rekindled faith in the great Avid deity. What's going on there?
Well, first of all, I want to give Jose Valenzuela Chilitos down in L.A. Very cool. Thank you, Jose. Very well done. Very useful, especially for a lot of guys getting started. Well, I guess I should take this moment to officially state that Pro Tools is getting pulled up more DAW at this point. I've denied it. I've slammed it. I've insulted it. I'm still not a fan of the MIDI side of it. But the more I work in Pro Tools, the more I'm impressed with what's going on. Now, I got to be fair. I'm working in Pro Tools 11. Mm-hmm. This is when this whole thing started, was Pro Tools 11. But I don't know what happened. I think perhaps my brain just finally clicked with how they want you to do the workflow. And I'm still kind of pissed that they don't let you have surround sound unless you have HD, and I don't feel like spending that kind of money. That's ridiculous. And I can see the relationship between Logic and Pro Tools and how they do their busing and routing systems pretty much the same, unless somebody can show me how they're doing it differently. And Ableton doesn't have surround sound, so I'm getting mixes from people, and they're always in Pro Tools, so then I therefore go into my Pro Tools and I bring up their mix, and I colorize the tracks, and I associate everything together, and I set up my side buses and all that stuff, and my auxiliaries, and I used to always do that in Ableton, but then I would have to convert, back and in a Pro Tools session to send them their files back, and that was just too much work. So I said, you know what, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to do it in Pro Tools, I'm going to learn the workflow, and the more I learn, the better it is. Like the batch exporting is pretty awesome. Creating groupings of tracks is really nice. Like I can't do that in Ableton. I can group them and create a folder that they sit in, but I can't hide them like you can in Pro Tools or in Pro Tools. That's actually the better way to say it. Like I can ungroup a folder in Ableton and all the tracks will drop down, but if I want to select them, I have to select one, hit Shift, and select the last one. So there's a couple of extra moves that I don't have to do in Pro Tools that I thought was good. Now, to be fair, in Pro Tools, unless somebody can tell me how, I can't select track 1, hold Shift, select track 10, and it'll select them all. It just switches down to 10. So that's annoying. So I wish these guys would just all get along and have one workflow that's the same. But I'm really enjoying Pro Tools. I like dropping in all the stuff on the sends, and setting up the routings is really, rather simple. And I don't know. It's not that it's that different than any other DAW I've used, but for some reason I finally am feeling like I need to pay it a compliment, and I'm actually enjoying it. And you know what's really weird? It's the last thing I'll say before I go on this long-winded thing any longer. But when I bring up Ableton, I feel like, as comfortable as I am and as much as I can do, that when I'm talking to a client and I say, yeah, I'm going to do this in Ableton, because sometimes they'll get curious, quite often they get curious, they either don't know what it is or they don't hear about a lot of people using it. And if I say, I'm going to do it in Logic, like a surround mix, because I always do those in Logic, then they go, okay. But I still feel like I'm kind of disappointing them a little bit. So if I just go, okay, I'll bring up Pro Tools and I'll do it in there, the conversation just flows. There's no weird look, there's no question. Just that's the experience I'm having, and so it's really been a lot of fun. I'm having fun with Pro Tools.
I've never used Pro Tools, so I'll just come out and say that right now. I've never had the opportunity or the money, but that sort of, I've heard a lot about it, and I still continue to hear a lot about it, good and mostly bad. But it seems that a lot of the complaints with Pro Tools is surrounding basically the business practices of Avid, as opposed to Pro Tools, the product itself.
Yeah.
Basically the way that Avid chooses to the way that they choose to sell it, and the way that they choose to get their user base and then grip their user base tightly, seems to be the main thing that people are dissatisfied with. I don't really hear too much people saying that I hate Pro Tools because this aspect of the functionality sucks compared to something else.
Yeah.
So what's your feeling there? Do you think that if Avid was if Pro Tools itself was run by a completely different company, the product itself was the same, but the pricing was more reasonable, more modern, I suppose, more and their approach to their user base was more normal. What do you think? Do you think would have a much different reputation in the industry?
I think so, absolutely. I've got 2 examples that confirm that. The fact that I can't do surround sound because I don't have an HD system is really kind of crappy. The HD systems that they offer, when you go to Sweetwater, just look up Avid or Pro Tools HD systems, and you'll see a list of like 30 options, and all of them are in the the 3 to 14,000 area. So that's just dumb marketing. I mean, I'm not going to spend that kind of money for something I don't even understand, and I'm also not going to call Sweetwater to have them explain it to me, because they're just going to try to sell me the damn thing. So I'm stuck reading about something that I already don't understand. And I do indeed, I'll say this frankly, I do hate asking people who are Pro Tools like evangelists anything about Pro Tools. But I'm the same way about anything. I don't want to talk to the guy who loves Roland and thinks that Korg is crap about some Roland question. I just want to get a straightforward, educational, unbiased answer from somebody. And so, yeah, so they don't make it very easy to figure out how to get an HD system. And so a friend of mine is building, for 2 years, he's been building this massive studio here in Ventura. And I've given him a Mac Mini and some equipment so that he can kind of get his bays off the ground. And it's an amazing place with this beautiful Neve board. And we were in there yesterday, and a friend of the studio brought in, actually, his name's Ross. He's another engineer there. He brought in a Mac, a G5. Well, you know, looked like a Mac
G5.
Pro. Well, they all look like Mac Pros. You know, you don't know it's a G5 yet, right? So the first thing I said when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, if this is an Intel chip, this is fantastic. You can install the latest Pro Tools. It's a free machine. You know, it's really going to give you some credibility to have Pro Tools on this machine. And sure enough, it was a G5 with a PPC. Therefore, he's got a limit of what Pro Tools he can install. And if he can't get up to 9, then he can't use other gear for interfaces. It has to be M-Audio or Digidesign or Avid. And those are either not very good. Frankly, I think that the mic pre's on the 001 is terrible. I've never felt very comfortable about M-Audio gear because it is low-end gear on purpose. And then Avid stuff is just still ridiculously expensive. Like if you get on eBay and you look up an Avid 192 right now, you know, somebody wants $500 or $600 for one of those, and it doesn't even work because you have to put a card in your machine. And maybe too, that's the thing I'm trying to figure out right now is why do you need a core card and an Excel card? You know, so I'm just going crazy. Do I just need the core card? Do I need a core and Excel? I want to put this in my studio. I'm liking Pro Tools. I want to step up to HD, and it's impossible for me to figure out without spending way more time than I have what I need and how cheap I can get it into my studio, because I'm fine with used gear. And, you know, sure, I could probably call Avid or whatever you call them, but I ended up having 2 licenses of Pro Tools, and one of them was installed on my iLok. This just happened last week. So I went to the website to write them an email and ask up this code that I have on this credit card sized thing. Is this the one on my iLok? If not, then it's going to be a gift to my friend for his studio. Try to find their email address. I dug and dug and dug and finally ended up in a place where they had this pre-created form where I could add in the information. Now, I did that. I had no problem finding ways for them to take my money. Everywhere I got led down the dark alleys of the internet, there was some Avid executive with his you know, his trench coat open saying, hey, buddy, you want to buy a watch? You know, that's the way it felt when I was trying to get to the stuff. And I'm like, no, I don't want to give you $30 for a damn question. It's easy. You should answer it. Have some customer support. And I eventually found this form, but it took a while. But in their defense, they answered it immediately and said, yes, that's the one that's on your iLok, which means that I lost the one that I had. I had 2, and I can't find it. So, you know, there's complaints right there. They're ridiculously expensive for new stuff. The used stuff, it's hard to figure out what you need. And it's still kind of expensive. I mean, $500 for an interface that doesn't work until I get 2 cards or 1 card, and those cards are $500. For used gear, $1,500 to get started with 8 tracks? That's ridiculous. So, yeah. You know, anyway, so there you go. I'm not crazy about their tech support. I'm not crazy about the way the company handles it. I'm not crazy about the expensive gear that is, let's be honest here. It's more name than it is quality. I have never, ever had somebody come back with one of my mixes and go, you know what, I think I can hear that you're running through Motu gear, and that's not very good.
I have another question.
Nobody's ever... Yeah.
I have another question. If in a parallel universe, let's say that the fame that comes with Pro Tools, the reputation and the legacy that Pro Tools has in the industry, is replaced by something else, something arbitrary. I don't know. Let's say Reaper, for example. Do you think if in this hypothetical universe that Pro Tools doesn't have the legacy that it has, would there be any reason to choose Pro Tools? In other words, the actual functionality of the software itself, remove the legacy, remove the reputation, remove the fact that you can just say Pro Tools in the industry and people will nod their head. If you remove that, is the product itself so appealing compared to all of the other alternatives out there?
That's a great question. My God.
It's
Yeah. Go ahead, Ben.
the workflow thing is just such it's such a thing. For us, when we have our own spaces where we do our thing, okay, that's cool. But if I was a Pro Tools certified guy, then I wouldn't have to worry about dealing with any of these other studios that I have to go to if I need to do specific work. Like, oh, I'm going to be recording a string quartet over here. Oh, I'm going to be doing a group VO session over here. I'm going to be doing another VO session over there. 3 separate studios, and they're all going to be using Pro Tools, which means all of them are going to be using that same workflow. It's hard to really separate out that Pro Tools legacy and the workflow that has remained consistent for literally decades now, how you actually do things in that space. There's thousands and thousands of people that are basically interchangeable in terms of their location and the functionality that they provide as engineers to thousands of studios all across the world. It's a crazy thing to wrap your head around it, and that is what makes Pro Tools so powerful.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I use this Tascam US200 because I learned by having my hands on a board I don't feel comfortable unless I've got flying faders and I can do some mixing and editing and hitting buttons for solo, mute, and all that stuff. And I use Ableton, I use Logic, I was a Cubase guy. None of them give me the full features of this US200 or 2400. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. It's still being bought regularly on eBay. Go to eBay and look up 2400 sold in the last month. There's probably going to be, 10 or 11 or 12 of those things. They really move them, and they don't make them anymore. But that doesn't excuse these other DAWs to ignore this hardware that people are using. And how hard could it be to throw in a file? Okay, we're going to recognize all of the functionality on a Tascam US2400. Well, with Pro Tools, every bit of it just locks into place. Boom. It works perfectly. With Logic has one of the worst external control surface interface hookups I've ever seen in my life. And Ableton, although it uses most of it, it doesn't use all of it. It doesn't allow me to use this top row of endless encoders that I have that can go from being a pan to being the control for like aux6 or something. It doesn't let me switch between those. So I'm always missing some sort of functionality. So in this alternate universe, whoever is allowing me to work the way I want to work is going to win that fight. And if that happens to be Pro Tools, because in this alternate universe they have respected this Huey architecture all the way for everything it can do, then I'm going to use them for that. As far as editing and mixing, I'm actually enjoying myself a lot more in Pro Tools doing that than I am in Ableton, mostly because of the mixer window. I grew up on that kind of interface, and I can just see it when I sit at Pro Tools and I look and I drop things in, and that makes sense, and I set up buses, and it makes sense. And Ableton doesn't give you that view. They give you, a regular cellular view or a timeline view. Don't mistake me. Ableton is tied for first with Pro Tools, but because of how many projects I get in now that need me to work in Pro Tools, if Ableton doesn't step up with surround sound, if Ableton doesn't step up with a mixer view that's better than the one that you see in the cells, then they're definitely going to lose Kyle Johnson. And I hate to say it, but because I loved Ableton and I still do, but I can see that they're really slow to release stuff. They're not going to do it. So in the alternate universe, it's whoever allows me to work the way I want to work, and that still might be Pro Tools.
Incidentally, have you ever used Reaper, or have you used it very much?
I have never installed, opened Reaper at all. It was a big hit when I was in New York. Everybody was getting really into it. But, I left Cubase, Ableton, I left Logic for surround mixes. I'm leaving Logic for Pro Tools when I have to do stuff. Do we really need any more DAWs?
Well, hey, that US2400 will work perfectly with Reaper.
Will it really?
Yeah, I'm just reading some forums, and yeah, it looks like it works perfectly.
Yeah, it's a funny product, Reaper. It's what I use when I'm not using a tracker. But Reaper is man, it's ugly. It's so ugly.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be.
No, that's the thing. I mean, you can. The thing about Reaper is that it's sort of anything goes. I mean, really, as far as its interface, its workflow, even what it looks like, anything goes, and you can be absolutely anything. You can make it look like absolutely anything. You can use it in any way that you want. You know, if you want to use it, like coming from, because my standard workflow is extremely esoteric, because I grew up and I still remain loyal to using trackers. But then Reaper sort of allows me to sort of mirror that workflow to a certain extent, or you can use it the way that it's just like really. It's a strange thing. Like, I've never seen software that is so open-ended, that is so customizable. Like I always say, the funny thing about Reaper is that you press the right click, and like the contextual menu fills up half of your screen. There's just like so many things that you can do. And the interface, you can just move that over there and this over here, and you don't like that style channel strip, you can do. Well, it's interesting because when you just sort of giving it a go, if you're just sort of trying Reaper because you're curious about what it is, no, it's not good, because you sort of sit there scratching your head and it's like, how do people use this? It takes a long time to sort of set up the way that you feel comfortable, and also to sort of get a feel for everything that it can be, and then to choose one of those ways for it to work for yourself.
What you say about Reaper, what I realize about most Reaper users I talk to, and you're not included in this group, Alex, is that the love for Reaper is because it's not Pro Tools. I talk to a lot of people who like Reaper, and it's because they found something that they wanted to kind of get into and really know, and it not be Pro Tools. And for me, that was well, it's never been my case for approaching a DAW. It's been purely because of workflow. Cubase, for me, as long as I used it, I still got confused when it would come up sometimes. It just seemed...
It's too German.
I don't know what it was about Cubase, but I used that longer than I've used any other DAW. I was on Cubase since... What was it, the Atari? Atari was on when it came out? Was that Cubase? I don't remember, but anyway, way early on. And I only went to Ableton because I was introduced to this new workflow, and it just totally clicked with me immediately, and I immediately switched. And then when 5.1 came along, I had to learn Logic. Well, Logic and me don't get along that well either. There's something about about Logic too. As much as I love the aesthetics of the color scheme, I don't like the cartoony feel of putting a little guitar in the corner and a little girl singing and a little, I'm like, come on, Logic. I know I can get rid of that stuff, but there's something about Logic that makes me kind of uncomfortable with the aesthetics of it. And having that information on the left side of a track, I like that I like to get rid of that and just have the track show me the information right there. And Logic doesn't treat me, Pro Tools feels like an adult DAW, where to me Logic feels like a college DAW, and Ableton feels like an adult DAW as well, with these secret features nobody knows about. But Reaper, I've never touched it, mostly because the people who tried to sell me on it were just that it was like trying to tell me I should start loving the Dallas Cowboys because that's their favorite football team, and so I was like, that's not good enough to sell me on it.
Yeah, I use Reaper. I actually use both Sonar and Reaper right now, and I'm actually bouncing between the two. I've used Sonar for more than a decade now. I actually used to be a Cubase guy and a digital performer guy, and then I decided, okay, Sonar, I am with this, and I've been there from Sonar 1 all the way to Sonar Platinum. I decided to splurge on the $150, and I upgraded to the latest version. But for the last few years, I've been bouncing between Sonar and Reaper, and the thing that I will say about Reaper is that it's absolutely amazing that you could have a program that is at once so robust and so customizable while also being so stable.
Oh, nice.
It is incredibly stable. I've had VSTs sometimes do weird things. Certain libraries, okay, they'll do weird things, but Reaper itself has never crashed on me. And the fact that I was able to really quickly configure Reaper to do all the things that I'm used to doing in Sonar and do them sometimes actually better. Right now, the way my workflow is when I'm doing music, I'm in Sonar. But if I'm doing some sound effects design, some soundscape stuff, I immediately just do stuff in Reaper. It feels like I've got it set up to where it feels kind of like how I remember Sonar feeling, just slightly faster.
Nice.
And
Nice.
so I'm actually doing both Reaper and Sonar right now, and I'm super happy with that. And maybe in a few years, depending on how Cakewalk goes, I might find myself being a staunch Reaper advocate.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't.
Well,
I don't think.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I don't. Reaper definitely doesn't need any more evangelism because I mean a lot of people are very enthusiastic about it for a good reason. But I think it is very much an acquired taste. You know, it's not for everybody, and it does many things quite a lot better and quite a lot more intuitively than a lot of the mainstream DAWs out there. However, I don't know that there is, if you're happy with Pro Tools and you're happy with Ableton Live, I personally don't know that there is, that much real advantage to jumping over to Reaper unless those other products are really giving you trouble, because it is an acquired taste and it does take a long time to get into. It's not something you can just, boot up, fire away, and you can. I mean, for mangling samples and doing sort of that kind of sound editing, it is actually very, very easy to use. But the interface is actually quite uncomfortable until you've actually delved to see what you can do with it. Then you realize, like I remember that, it's like I wonder if I could have almost like Photoshop layers view of my different MIDI tracks here, so that I could turn them on and off in the one MIDI editor here, and lock them so that I can see them ghosted in the background, but be editing a different track's MIDI clip in the foreground, so I can because I like doing that when you work with a tracker, you're used to seeing everything at once. So I like being able to see everything at once, and I wonder if I could color code these other regions so that I know that the red ones are drums and the blue ones are bass. And in Reaper, yes, you can do all of that, and it's actually not that difficult, but it just takes a little bit of fiddling,
So there's a couple things about Pro Tools that are driving me crazy. For instance, there's no set percussion as a white color, but when you color those tracks, they don't have black and white as an option in your coloring of track. How can you not have black and white? They got everything else, but not black and white. But another thing that's really cool about Pro Tools, and I can't do this in Ableton very easily, but I've learned all the keyboard shortcuts to do it rather quickly, is to create, like you're saying, layers of tracks. What do you call that when you takes, where you take the first take of the guitarist and you go, okay, let's do it again, right? Well, in Ableton, I'd duplicate that track and I would immediately set it to ARM and turn off the ARM for record on the previous track and say, let's go. And that takes a half a second. But in Pro Tools, there's actually a drop-down on the track where you can just go, yep, new take, and it just drops it in. New take, new take, new take. And it's got this brilliant way of exporting all of those takes or getting rid of the takes that you don't want to send to somebody. Like if you finally have decided that take 3 is the one we're going to use, and now we got to send it off to be mixed, you can export this mass thing and select the takes very simply that you want to send. Or if you're sending it to a guy you're working with and he needs to see all the takes, you can just export that whole thing. But with that being said, I want the ability to pull in Pro Tools. So if anybody can show me how to do this, because I am still considered a noob. If you can show me how to pull in external audio files into my project so that I could just zip up my project and send it, that would be awesome, because I've got files on Drobos, I've got files on attached Firewire 800 hard drives, and they're all over the place, and the only way I can figure out how to do it is to go into Save As for Pro Tools and collect a copy of the project and try to get them in there. But I did a test of that yesterday, the day before, and it still didn't do it exactly the way I wanted it to. Whereas in Ableton, they have this thing called Collect All and Save, and I hit that. It's one of these save options, Save, Save As, or Collect All and Save. I hit Collect All and Save, a dialog comes up, I select the things I want, I hit Save, boom, they're all there, I just ship it off. And that way I never lose those files. So I haven't been fully converted to Ableton or to Pro Tools. I still am a huge lover of Ableton. And if Ableton tomorrow came out with 5.1 and I stopped mixing, I would probably never open Pro Tools again. But because I'm doing so much mixing now, and because they're always in Pro Tools, it's been an actually rather enjoyable experience. And I just wanted to kind of say that out loud because I have been a very vocal, hater of the Pro and the tools. But now I'm going, hey, I kind of get this and I kind of like it, but it still needs to be better.
So I think we were going to be talking about Logic 10.1, the big new update from Apple on Logic, but the magnificent Mike has forbidden us to talk about that until he's on the show because he is a big Logic user and he's very happy with the update. But I just want to preview it by saying something that I'm going to say in the show that we do about Logic 10.1 with this.
Yes.
Tell me why in Logic, okay, so I don't like the fact that we've got this little kind of gain reduction meter there and this little kind of thumbnail of the EQ because I want to use my own EQs, my own compressor. Right.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay, so we can customize the channel strip there. So if you press, I think it's Command 2 or Command M or something, you get the extra window with the mixer in it. Right. Okay, so I see all of this other stuff in there that I don't need. I don't need the settings. I don't need the MIDI effects. So I'm going to turn them off. Right-click. Oh, here we are. Configure channel strip. Turn them off. There we go. I've got it just how I like. Close the mixer window. Close the mixer window. Start working on my project because I don't usually like to have the mixer visible at the same time as the tracks. I like to separate those in my head. Open up the mixer window again to make some changes, and the changes haven't stuck. Why is that? Why allow the user to customize what's in the channel strip if it's going to just revert back to default as soon as you close the window?
No
This
idea.
is like as a nice little encapsulated example of the kind of head-scratching conundrums that Logic puts me into. Like, why?
Oh, let me add to that. Let me add one to that drives me effing batty. I was trying to show somebody how to add an effect to their track. And I clicked where I'm supposed to click, and nothing came up. And it's blue. And I'm like, oh, let me click again. No, I know this is where it is. So I'm spending all this time going, okay, I must be in the wrong place. And I go looking around in this track for other places to insert this thing. But I know I'm in the right place. I finally just get so frustrated, I took my finger on my mouse like an angry little child, and I pushed down, and I held it down, and I strangled it. And then it came open. Boop. It was like, oh, no, you have to hold me down. Why? Why do I have to hold you down? Why can't I just click you, you little pain? You ever seen that one where that guy is sitting very, very calmly at his computer and he stands up and throws his computer out the window and gets all pissed off and starts smacking his keyboard on his desk? I was almost that guy for a minute because I just want to do this thing really quickly to show this person how to do something and be helpful, and it's turned into 45 minutes because I have to hold it down. Thanks, Lon. That makes a lot of sense.
See, this is one reason I think why, because people who go to Reaper from Logic definitely love the fact that, if you don't like the fact that you have to hold the mouse button down, then you just go to this menu and you just pull up and you can actually, like, every single function of Reaper can be customized. So you can just, you could fart and then it will open up the effects thing if you wanted. I mean,
that's this mic on your chair just in case you have gas.
Yeah, but I mean, there's so many little things with Logic. Well, let's save it until Mike's here to justify it.
Yeah,
I mean, actually, I do quite like how Logic looks. Not that the looks really will change the quality of what your music is going to be, but and I like the visual design of it, and to me it feels quite comfortable to be in as a. If you're going to be looking at one piece of software for several hours on end, you don't want it to look completely ugly like Reaper does, but there are just so many of these little things. It's like, did you guys try using your own software? Did you try to write a piece of music in this before you shipped it?
Yeah, NASA creates a DAW. Welcome to Logic. But you know what? When I sit down to mix, the first thing I do is I turn on my lava lamp. I turn on this crazy little hairy lamp I've got over here. I've got some colored lights that I turn on because I want to be in the mood. I want to be kind of like in this creative, inspired mood, and that's it. I've never been into anything that would alter your mind. I've never even tried marijuana, but I like crazy lights, and I want to turn them on, and I want to just kind of chill and do the work. And if I go to a DAW that looks like I'm in a hospital, I lose that kind of comfort level, and I love that about Logic. Logic looks cool. Ableton looks cool. Pro Tools doesn't look so cool, so I spend a lot of time coloring all my tracks and grouping things, and getting it all ready so I can be kind of comfortable. But when it comes to editing, when it comes to mixing in Pro Tools, I'm just flying. And it took me very little time to kind of get the hang of that. I just really had to erase that prejudice side of my mind that was against it and just say, let's talk to it. Let's give it a chance. I'm really getting happy with it.
Yeah, you need to. I need to come over and get you into trackers a little bit. Then you feel like you're writing music as an aircraft traffic control person or something.
I don't need a tracker. I've got
there you
this.
go. You've got your tracker there. Yeah, people always come over and when I'm working in Kyoto with Vitae, it's like, man, why does your audio software always look so good? Hey, that's what it is,
Nice.
Game audio. That's what it is, we're just good-looking people.
We are good-looking people with good-looking DAWs.
That's right.
Hey, what else are we going to talk about before we get to the end? Because I want to see us off with some spiel about the show, and obviously.
Wow.
Let's have a quick recap of the last 52 shows there, Kyle. I think it's been a year.
We've covered so much stuff. I'm actually afraid that next year we'll just repeat covering the same stuff. But we have, opening next year, we have some top-notch guests. We've had great guests in the past. Please go back and look at our shows. We are very lucky and honored to have so many people come on our show. But I just got brave and lined up some people I was afraid to ask this year, so that's not fair to say because I was afraid to ask the other people in the past too because I'm a sissy. But I still did it, and I'm really excited about some of the people we have upcoming, and we're going to kick it off right at the beginning of the year. To recap the 52 episodes, though, man, I mean, I couldn't do this without you guys. I can't thank you enough for answering that email and agreeing to be part of this crazy, crazy show. A weekly show doing this is tough, and it's really enjoyable with you guys, and I think that the content that we're providing is where it is because of you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kyle. It's been, I think I joined from, I don't know when I think it was episode maybe 20 or 10 or around there. You had like 3 tracker episodes in a row, so I thought, yep, got to be a part of this.
Nice. Well, we want, Jack said, hey, check this guy out, and we talked, and I was like, oh my God, Alex would be a perfect addition to the show. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Well, actually, I wouldn't have joined if it wasn't for Vince and Mike, the champions, and you, Carl, too.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. I'm a host for a reason. I've got a face for radio.
No, we're going to be testing that out in a bit because we're all going to be in person in just a few weeks. Going to do a show from San Francisco.
So that's what I wanted to talk about. Should we go ahead and announce our live show from GDC?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. We're doing a live show from GDC. There, done. Good night. Okay. So we are not going to have a Monday show on let me bring up my calendar so everybody will know early. We are not going to have a Monday show on Monday, March 2nd. We will be all getting ready to go to GDC. Some of you will already be there, Alex, and others of us won't be arriving till Tuesday. Vince, when are you arriving? Is it Tuesday?
Oh, I'll actually be there pretty early. I'm going to be there starting Sunday.
Just the day after me.
Wow.
I'll be there on Saturday.
Yeah.
Nice. So we're thinking about doing the show on Wednesday. We're also thinking about doing it in the morning. So we haven't decided yet the place because we don't want to do it inside the Moscone so that we can get as many people as possible. Because I know some people go to GDC, but they don't buy a ticket to GDC because GDC is after GDC. And so let's do it outside the Moscone so that we can get as many people there as possible. We're trying to line up a very, very special guest. It might just be all of us just hanging out because I know that Ian's going to be there, and Matt's going to be there, and Jack's going to be there, and I think Jack's going to be there. But I'm hoping that we'll all sit down at a table with our laptops open beside each other because I don't think one camera would get a wide screen of the whole panel. And we'll just put on a show to a live audience. So come down and watch the show. Keep your eye on our Twitter and keep your eye on our webpage. Twitter is Game Audio Hour and our webpage is gameaudiohour.com because that's where we'll be making the official announcement as well as during the show, upcoming show. We'll be announcing what day it's going to be, what time it's going to be, and where it's going to be. We're still working out the details. But we can say, without any question, we are going to do a live show from GDC, and I'm super excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited too.
The
first time I've actually seen every one of your heads.
Oh, sorry, guys, you broke up. Go ahead.
In 3D.
No, my head in 3D is very attractive. Yeah. In 4D, you don't want 4D because, well, no, I use a hair product. It smells pretty good. Wouldn't fourth dimension be smell? What is fourth dimension? Time.
Time.
I'm being an idiot. Smell's already in it. No. I never mind.
It's time to end the show, Carl. Time to end the season.
I'm out of scotch. I make no sense when that happens. Yeah, I'm really excited to hang out with everybody. I think, Alex, you're the only person I haven't actually met in real life, which is what you're alluding to. You're going to see us all in the reels.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of spending an afternoon and evening with Vince when he came to visit in Japan. But for the rest of you, it's going to be the first time. I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too, man. Well, let's kick it off there. I think it was a fun show. Here's the book. Check out the book. Kyle's starting to love Pro Tools. That should be announced by the Pope. Let's see. We talked about what else did we talk about? How did we start?
Roland.
We had a good show. Oh, the sound canvas. That's right. And your guys' love for the Cocteau Twins. Thank you for leaving me under that bus while it was still moving. I appreciate that. And that's it. So like us on Facebook and tweet us on the tweeters and subscribe to us on the Uist of Tubists, and we will see you in the future on the interwebs next week. Thanks, chatties. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.